everyone, and welcome back to the Pretty Healthy Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Brandi Moore, and today I have with me Theresa Paganini. She is the owner of the Monarch Effect, which is a company that is dedicated to helping transform people's minds to transform their bodies. She's also a published author, and she has created the emotional eating workbook, Feel Not Food. If you're on YouTube, you can actually show this. If you didn't know, I do record the episodes and put them up on YouTube, which is an emotional eating handbook that can be used by itself. It can be used along with her program, and we'll have her kind of explain a little bit about that in a second. And then her program that I mentioned is one for emotional eating, and it's called Love Yourself Lean. She's all about teaching people how to transform their way of thinking, speaking, eating, and behaving to foster love so they can heal their relationship with food and finally lose the weight for good. Thank you so much for joining me, Theresa.
I'm super excited to be here.
We will jump right in. If you could tell everyone about your journey with emotional eating and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So emotional eating was something that I had watched growing up. My mother struggled with it her entire life. And so watching not only her struggles with weight, right? Because weight's the more obvious one, which is why so many people focus on it because it's so externally noticeable, but also recognizing how she talked to herself, very self-abusive, very degrading, and no patience for herself at all. And this was a phenomenal. She's still here. She's a phenomenal human. She just would give the shirt off of her back, and she took care of everyone she's ever met, and just really selfless, and could never value herself. And you could see that, and you could hear that, and when she was upset, she turned to food. When she was happy, she turned to food. When she was frustrated, there would be food. When she was hurt, it was food. And so growing up and watching that, no matter how much she taught me differently, she did not want me to be her. And it was like paramount to her that I knew exactly how to eat well to create a healthy life and body. Kids are going to learn what they see far faster than they're going to learn what they're taught. So having watched her, right, we would have these mommy-daughter days, and it was surrounded by what are we going to eat? Where are we going to have lunch? And I'd get a great grade. Well, let's go out for ice cream. Or, hey, the family's all together Sunday morning. Let's go grab some bagels and donuts. And so our world was just always about food. And so I was a super active kid. And that helped me from being an overweight kid. I was never a skinny kid. I wasn't a chubby kid. I was an active kid. I looked athletic. I could probably eat the same amount as a linebacker at 6 years old, but I worked out like a linebacker, so it was okay, right? I was a ballerina, I was a gymnast, I was a figure skater, so I was constantly moving, and that saved my life, thank God. But when I was 10, we moved. So I was raised originally in New Jersey. I have 3 older brothers, and a village raised me. And this is back in the day where people weren't afraid to let their children have freedom.
Not at all. The neighbors were allowed to punish you.
Yes. Right? Like every hour, some neighbor would call my mother and be like, don't worry, I see her. She's fine. Yeah. Right. And you'd be out from dawn till dusk. And so, there was no fear and there was no inhibitions. And I had this huge safety and comfort. And being the last of 4 kids with a very active, involved mother, the entire town knew me. So if there was going to be an event, it was at our house. If kids were going to gather, it was at our house. If a parent was going to be in charge of something, it was my parent. So I was like the little sweetheart of the town. And so talk about self-confidence and comfort and just like, people love me. Of course they love me, right?
Yeah.
Then you move, and it was 10. Thank God it wasn't teenager years, but still it was 10. And my brothers were far enough older than me that they didn't come. So I went from being one of 4 to being an only child, and then work in a neighborhood filled with families with young children to more of a retirement community in Florida, where I didn't hear my first kid for like 6 months.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It's crazy, right? So all of a sudden, right, I'm raised solo, and I start trying new schools where they're the sweethearts. I'm the outsider. Got the funny accent. They don't know who I am. Like, who's this girl? And I started to experience rejection for the first time. And so having watched how my mother responded to that, right? Like, she's this great human. And so for her, rejection was always about her physical, her weight. And so when I start to experience rejection, I'm a good person, right? It must be because I'm not thin enough. And so therein lies, started the disordered eating. And I, at that point, did turn into a real eating disorder. I became anorexic, and it was a control thing. You don't see the reality in the mirror. I saw something completely different, and it's a mind problem, right? The food's the weapon of choice, but it's a mind problem. And so that's not my natural disorder. So as soon as I started working at fast food as a teenager, that flew out of the water, and I went back to more the binge style of eating, which is more me, and gained like 20 pounds in a year. And so that just kept going. And with that comes, at least for me, depression, isolation,
Yep.
lack of self-worth, all of that feeling of, well, of course people love me, turned into, why would they love me? And these are all of the things I watched my mother battle growing up and didn't realize I was adopting. And so everything I loved and respected about her was being minimized, and everything that I didn't respect or love about her, I was adopting and embracing. And so I was associating food and using food in so many ways, except for actually fuel. And that's what led to me being 45 pounds overweight, which at 4'11"
It's a lot for you.
is a lot for me, right?
Yeah. 5 pounds can be a lot on 4'11".
Yeah, right. Like that's like 6 sizes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal. So, but anyway, so I finally figured, I had a few aha moments that took me to the point where I was like, this is not the life I want to live. And I'm the one in control of this. I can make the choice to keep following and developing the behaviors and mindset of the aspects of my mom I don't appreciate, or I could become my own woman with her as an example of the things I do appreciate about her, and change my life. And that was when I put myself through my own journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's such a relatable story as well, because I feel like most women at some point have witnessed or experienced just that. I wrote down a couple of notes, but I've talked about this in a different podcast episode, but someone close to me, I'm gonna leave it at that. I was about to say, and then I was like, well, wait a second.
Shouldn't do that. This is a podcast.
not my story, but I'll give you a loose version. But it was someone that I knew. Their child was standing in the mirror, and very athletic kid. We're talking the age maybe 4 or 5. So 4 or 5, she lean too, like one of those kids who had abs. And you're just like, you just, I mean, at the same time, I've tried to do monkey bars. If you've been on a playground as an adult, I want you to do the things you used to do as a kid. And
that was like no big deal.
No big deal. Like monkey bars were easy. Every day you're crushing them, right? I've tried to do them as an adult many times since having kids. And I'm just like, like I'm lucky if I get 2 or 3 swings in before I fall off, like grip strength off, core, just the whole 9 yards.
And confidence, right?
True.
Just a belief. Like as a kid, you don't ever question whether you can. Of course you can. As an adult, your first question is, why should I be able to do this? I haven't done that, right? Like we start with barriers, right? Anyway, not to steal your story, but yeah.
No, we do start in a much more negative headspace than as a kid. Because when I look back, I don't think I ever thought, you're right, could I or could I not do this? Like, I wonder if I get on here, will I be able to get it all the way across? It's like, no, I'm going to do it. And even if you get halfway, it's like, that was easy. Let's try it again until I get all the way. You have a different mindset. You haven't been beaten down by the world.
Right? Or taught differently, right? Like you haven't been taught differently.
But I think, so she's standing in the mirror, and she put on workout clothes, and she goes, oh, I'm just so fat. I really need to go to the gym.
Isn't that just awful?
And I remember thinking to myself, like, and telling her, like, you are, number 1, you're a kid. Number 2, you're in perfect shape, right? Even if kids can have a little more weight, a little less weight, like depending on their genetics, a lot of times their activity level, how the parents eat, there's a lot of things that affect that. But it was one of those where I just looked and I was like, I knew to myself, I didn't want to do that to my kids when I got older. And it wasn't done maliciously and it wasn't done anything. It was just, you don't know what your kids are watching until something like that happens. I'm sure she never even thought about the fact that she body checked in the mirror and would comment out loud on how she looked and what she liked and what she didn't like. But her daughter picked up on all of those things and then was repeating it. So if she's going to repeat that at such a young age, why wouldn't she keep that thought when she gets older? I read a book, The Four Agreements, which is like we're taught, isn't it great?
Yes.
Really short book. If you haven't read it, highly, highly recommend it. I'll put it in the show notes down below. But it's all about kind of how you're raised, how everyone's indoctrinated with social beliefs and social norms. And then you get to an age where you can continue to believe those things or you can change. Now, you can always believe those things or change. There's that aspect of cognitive dissonance that like, oh, if my parents told me this, and I think they're right with everything, if I say this one thing's wrong, now I have to reassess everything else they told me and what else might I find. Some people decide that that's not a journey they want to take. And they're like, I don't even care. I'll just blindly believe it. Yep. And other people will go through, but then you have to question a lot of other things. So the other thing I wrote down, because you mentioned rejection. And I remember being in high school and there were two guys that I liked at the same time, like within a short amount of time of each other, looked completely different, acted completely different. Like you blindfolded, you wouldn't think that these guys are related in any way. And they weren't familially related, but I was talking to one and he chose a different girl. And then I was talking to the other and I don't know, we just didn't start dating. Oddly enough, we did start dating eventually, but he rejected me at first. And my first thought, like this tells you how messed up it was, oh, it must be me because I'm fat. Mm-hmm. Now, also to preface this, my size at the time, I was probably a size like 0'3". So we're talking 105 to 110 pounds.
Isn't this crazy?
But that was the thought that I had. And I had a week, very similarly to yours might have lasted longer, where I restricted eating. And then at the end of the week, my mom didn't know that I did this, obviously. She worked. And so I could kind of get away with either only eating dinner or if she got home saying that I already ate dinner. Mm-hmm. If you're listening, I'm sorry.
Things you don't know won't hurt you now anyway.
She didn't know. But at the end of the week, we went to go buy clothes and she commented, oh, have you been doing something? You look thinner. And I was like, yes,
right.
It's working. She didn't mean it. She wasn't saying anything, but that is how I took it. At the same time, I did get really hungry. And I was like, this is for the birds, literally eating 4 carrot sticks a day. Like, I need food.
Yeah.
And I luckily moved on quickly before it did any long-term metabolic damage, but no one told me that. That was, again, a behavior I had witnessed, even if they didn't know that they were modeling that for me. And then I just made that gigantic leap.
Sure.
So yeah, it's such a relatable story that's something that you've experienced and that you've overcome it.
Yeah. Well, and right, there's the overcoming and then there's the curing. And I want to make sure that's really clear. Like I haven't cured myself, right? Like I still struggle.
Yep.
Right. I still struggle with emotional eating. I still struggle to feel my emotions and understand what I'm feeling or understand I'm just in the mood to eat. And understanding now, okay, well, that's actually a sign something's amiss. Mm-hmm. Don't grab any food just yet, right? Like I've learned that, but it still occurs.
Yep.
It's still there. A fit body doesn't take it away. But obviously the fit body proves I've learned to win more battles than not, which is the big difference than before.
I mean, with any addictive behavior or addiction, there's always going to be a certain level of consciousness you have to have with that behavior. I too have struggled with emotional eating and I'm in a stressful period of my life. I'll update you guys later if I haven't already posted an update episode. And I find myself wanting to eat. Like I'm currently doing intermittent fasting and it'll be like 9:30 and I'm just hungry, not hungry. Mm-hmm. I want to eat something. And I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to chew some gum and drink some water. I might be dehydrated. Number one. Number two, I need to keep my mouth busy because I just want to snack. I know I've had dinner. I've been sustained. I'm not starving myself on intermittent fasting. I'm basically getting all of my caloric needs just within a time eating window. But I just want to munch. And the more stuff we have going on, the more I find myself in the kitchen, opening the refrigerator on autopilot, being like, but what can I eat? And then eating something like, I think it's chips. Eat the chips. Nope, wasn't the chips. I think it's a granola bar. Was it that? No. Was it salty or was it sweet? I don't know. I'll keep bouncing back and forth.
Right. And that's where like the binge happens. It's not even like an intentional binge where you like find the thing and just go crazy on it. It's more of, I want something. I don't know what it is. So let's just experiment until I find it. And then you're like, nope, 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 nope. And so you never, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But that's when I realized that it was stress, that I was just stress eating. Like the reason why you don't want anything and the reason why nothing is really scratching that itch, right? It's not like, ooh, I want French fries. And then you get French fries. You're like, that was good. I'm done.
Right.
It's this like, I'm in the kitchen like a lion for what I can devour. And I'm just taste testing everything until I find whatever that craving is. But I'm craving something that I won't find in the kitchen.
Right. Like you're craving comfort. You're craving actually,
Correct.
like you're craving a break, right? Like you're exhausted.
Yep.
And you're craving something that proves the workday is done and you have permission to just unwind.
Yeah.
And in my emotional eating program, I talk a lot about when you have a craving, the first thing I want you to figure out is, are you feeling an emotion because you can reach for the cookie, but you're not eating a cookie.
No.
You're eating anger, right? You're eating stress. It's just in the shape of a cookie. Yeah. And so, right, like you have to understand, what are you eating? Because of course the why matters, but sometimes you don't even realize the what it isn't. That's why you don't enjoy the cookie. You don't taste the cookie.
Yes.
Because you're not eating a cookie. You're eating whatever is going on. And sometimes you just don't even know what it is.
From a very recent experience. Yes. of just of taste testing and then having that like, no, that wasn't it. Is it something else? And then realizing at the end of sampling 15 different things and still being in the cabinet and recognizing I am not physically hungry. This is not that reaction. Just kind of identifying like, okay, I think I'm just trying to get that serotonin hit, right? I just want to like boost that serotonin really quick. And that is fast, right? That fast food, the cheap, greasy, dirty kind that you eat when you're hungover in college, that does it. It gives you that serotonin boost. And so if you're on the hunt, so going to your emotional eating course, right? Because that is why we're having this conversation. How could someone use the workbook versus the program? Kind of give us the layout of what the program is and kind of how you help identify and work through those things.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the workbook itself, as you had mentioned, it can work standalone. So it's a workbook. It's not a book. You don't read it from cover to cover. And as I tell everyone, I'm not the solution. The book's not the solution. What the book is, what the program is the guide that takes you through the journey. So you understand what turns are available and you get to choose the turn, but at least I'm going to show you. So here's the course, here's the pro and con of the course, and figure it out. And so with the book itself, the pro of the book is it's completely affordable. Get it on Amazon. It's super easy, right? Super convenient. And you have your own space and you can do your own thing. It's very private. The con of the book is it does require you to be really self-motivated to stick with it. And not just when it gets difficult, put it aside and be like, and yeah, I'll do that later. Or I love this. A lot of people do it like, hey, I bought your book, as if like they deserve like a cookie or a reward. And I'm like, okay, have you read it? Oh, well, no. And I'm like, okay, well, does you no good? Like
it's a coaster at that point.
Yeah, like owning the book is not helpful. You have to open it. And so people will ask me, like, is there an e-version? I'm like, well, no, because I don't know if you can see this, but it's a workbook. Like it's got places for you to fill in, for you to do stuff. And so the book by itself absolutely can help you, but it's a very solitary experience and it's a very self-disciplined experience where you just really need to stick with it. And where the program, I think, provides a bit more support is it's not just the book. Mm-hmm. It's the book on what I would say steroids. The program has a whole lot of videos. It's got me on video. It's got TED Talks on video that are relevant. It's got articles. It's got educational moments. It's got inspirational moments. And it's really got activities in there that supplement what's in the book. And so much more biteable chunks, and it's much more visually stimulating. So people have very different learning styles. My past life in my corporate world job is developing instruction and recognizing, there are people that prefer to learn through reading. Others would rather do, others would rather see, right? And so this program, the online program, hits a variety of modalities of learning styles. So that way, whether you're a visual, a doer, a reader, all of them are hit. And so it's much more stimulating and I think effective than just having a one learning style tool like the book. So that's really the main difference. If somebody doesn't own the book, they'll be able to read the book through the program.
Okay.
So that's a bonus. And then at the end of each chapter of the program, which corresponds with the chapter of the book, there's a PDF version of the chapter that they can always print.
Okay. That's helpful.
So, right. So if somebody has the book, it's great because then they've got their own version. It's right there. It's all put together in a bind. But if they don't, and they wanted the program instead, because they understand that's more their learning style, then that's, they'll get access to the book in a different format.
And you have a coaching aspect to your business as well, right?
Absolutely. So the way I describe it is I have 3 levels of service to achieve the same end, right? For somebody that is struggling on a budgetary constriction, or they're like, who the hell is this woman? I don't know if I really want to invest in anything she's doing. The book is a great start. It's like that introductory, or it's really just the affordable solution to help you. For somebody who is still just confined and can't afford the one-on-one, because really the one-on-one is going to always be the most expensive of anybody's service. But they really need more support. The online program is basically working with me one-on-one, but affordably. And so it's a 4 to 6 month program. It's given in biteable chunks. You only get so much of it every single week to work with. So you can't just go crazy and get it all done in a week. That's not really doing it appropriately. There's opportunity for interaction with me, with the other participants. And so that's really where the majority fall, because it's affordable and it's effective and it's enjoyable as well. And then there is the one-on-one coaching. That's for somebody who really wants the one-on-one, who feels much more comfortable having an ad hoc conversation like we're having, where they can come at me wherever they are in their journey. And our conversation is always every week going to start from, where are you today? What is on your mind today? What's struggling your challenge today? Versus the book and the online program, which is going to follow a set structure.
Okay, that makes sense. But also, so one thing that I've realized in private practice is people oftentimes are not very connected to their emotions.
Not at all.
I'm just thinking, including I'm just as guilty as everyone else. So going through a workbook, right? As you mentioned, you have questions in here. So it's like, this makes me feel guilty. This is how I can forgive myself. There's certain like mantra type things in here, right? Write your praise phrase. It's very much active. When you say it's a workbook, you mean it. But if people don't feel their emotions, that I feel like would be a much harder time working through that on your own. Do you have a tip for, you're in the kitchen, you're scouring, you're on the hunt for something. Do you have a tip for how you kind of stop and then how to help recognize which emotion it is that you're feeling so you can process it?
So yeah, and there's actually, the book, and that's a really good point. The book has, and the program have a specific order because of that very thing. Somebody's not going to be able to walk in and immediately recognize, hey, I need to forgive myself. If somebody read that on like the first chapter, they would get rid of the book and throw it in the trash and be like, this girl is whack, like whatever. Right. So there's earlier sections in the chapter or in the book and in the program that teach people, okay, you may not understand what you're feeling. So let's look at this instead of an emotional level, something we're much more familiar with. Let's go to a physical level, right? So do you find there are moments where you start to tremble, or your heart starts to race, or you start getting shortness of breath, or you feel yourself getting really hot? That's most likely physical cues you're experiencing anger. Right? Or are there times where you honestly, your first instinct is, I want to hide, or I want to cry? You may be feeling hurt. So there's a whole section of the program that teaches people the physical and mental cues to look for, that where if they don't know how to name what it is they're feeling, it helps them to start recognize, okay, so this, pay attention to the scenario. Does anger make sense for that scenario? Because that could be what you're feeling. Yeah. And if you're like, I guess that makes sense for the scenario. Okay, then by the way, you're angry. Right? Note to self, that's angry. I feel angry, right? And so, but part of the program, and a lot of it, right? So when we go, like you said the other night, you wanted to eat.
Yep.
But you didn't know what you were feeling.
Nope.
And right. So you just were like, well, there was no immediate stop to say, I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm just in the mood to eat. So let's go figure out how to fulfill that. Right. And so where I go is what you truly are looking for is fulfillment. And in the place of that, you're instead going for full. Right. And they're two totally different feelings.
Yep.
And so I teach my clients, anytime you have the idea, I want to eat, stop. Don't. You have a 30-second timer. I promise you, no matter how starving you are, you can wait 30 seconds to eat something, right?
Yep.
But in that 30 seconds, first question, am I physically hungry?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Second question, if you are physically hungry, because emotional hunger feels like physical hunger frequently.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time I ate? Right? If it was 6 hours ago, yeah, you're probably physically hungry.
Yep.
If it was 1 hour ago and you had a meal, you're probably actually not physically hungry. Right? Yep. If you had 4 carrot sticks, you may be physically hungry, right? So am I physically hungry? If so, when was the last time I ate? So really, let's validate this. And then if I did recently eat, or I'm not physically hungry, what just occurred?
Yep.
Physically, what are you feeling? Right? Mentally, what's your first reaction? Right? Are you wanting to punch something? Are you wanting to hide? Are you wanting to cry? Are you wanting to go into a dark room and go to sleep? This will help you understand there is some level of unrest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point, food is out of the equation, right? Like you've now told yourself, you've proven to yourself, food's not the answer. So it no longer matters. Yep. Get out of the kitchen. Just leave the kitchen. It's not your solution. At this point, now you've got to figure out what your solution is. For me, it's journaling. I'm going to go and I'm going to write down, okay, really, really, really want to eat. I'm really technically not hungry. So something's off and I don't know what. And then I'm just going to let the pen go. And I don't need to worry about senses. I don't need to worry about having the answer. The answer is going to end up on the paper. I don't have to worry about that part, right? But by the end, I'm going to have a clear idea of, you know what? I'm exhausted.
Yep.
And I'm looking for energy. Or I'm exhausted mentally and I need a mental break, right? I'm exhausted physically and I need to either stop lifting today and maybe do a yoga program, or I need to fit in a nap, or I need self-care of some sort. And so through that process, able to identify what's truly wrong. And so it's the hardest and easiest thing to do. Well, I'm not saying easiest, simplest. The hardest and simplest thing to do. Yeah. Stop yourself and put yourself on a 30-second timer and start asking yourself some questions.
Yeah.
And then the moment you recognize you want to eat, but you're not physically truly hungry, get out of the kitchen. Just leave. I don't care if you go outside, go to your bedroom, go to the garage. I don't care. Get out of the kitchen. Right? Yeah. Create that physical break of I'm walking away because this isn't the answer. And then it gives you space to breathe and figure out what it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do also want to piggyback on that and say, if that's been you, like it's been me, and you recognize it's the feeling and you still choose to eat, you're still learning, and that's okay.
Totally.
Because there is a lot of ebbs and flows, right? And I remember distinctly recognizing, like, you're not actually hungry. You just want to eat because you're eating your feelings right now. And do you still want to do that? Because really at that point, things that you know, like the satisfaction you're looking to get from that brownie, or the satisfaction I was looking to get from chips, or anything else I selected that day, wasn't the same as when I'm actually hungry. Like it was kind of like, I mean, that was good. That wasn't it. And I can't remember if I left the kitchen or not, but I definitely remember having the moment and even just recognizing that is a success. Like,
Absolutely.
check that in the box. You know what? I still ate, but I knew why I was eating. And next, my goal is going to be to know why I'm eating prior to, snacking on all these things, and then making the choice that that's not going to serve me right now because it's not going to fill whatever you're trying to fulfill. And instead, if I journal or if I go for a walk or if I just go do deep breathing or if I meditate, like that is going to actually fill my tank. It will do so much better. But as you kind of learn to process this stuff, I'm sure there's ebbs and flows in everyone, right? Even in the journey, even when you're years out.
It's a huge tenet of the program. So the whole kind of, what I repeat over and over again in the program is I'm 44 years old. I've got 44 years of behaviors. I'm not going to undo that behavior in 44 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it is about a slow transition, hence the name of my company, the Monarch Effect. It's a transformation,
mm-hmm.
right? The caterpillar doesn't all of a sudden one day sprout wings. It has to build a cocoon. It's got to hang out in there. It's got to start building the wings. It's got to fight its way out. Like there's a process. And so is our transformation from this unhealthy view of ourselves and treatment of ourselves to a healthy. And so coming at everything with the F word, forgiveness,
mm-hmm.
that scary word that people are like, what? But on the same track, but just a slight deviation. I remember seeing once this girl had an athletic jacket on, and on the back, it said, "My team has never lost. We either win or we learn."
Yeah.
And I was like, that is the best thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And that is what the program is about. You don't fail per se,
mm-hmm.
right? You do, but you're failing. That's when you get your best learning. That's when you embrace it to go, oh my God, I had a great learning moment today. Not, oh God, I had a failure today.
Yeah.
Right. It's all in it. Hence why mindset is my focus, because failure is failure, but how you view it is what makes it a completely different animal.
Yeah. And whether you take that failure and turn it into success later down the line, because if you look at any successful person, whether it be fitness or business or lifestyle, anything, it's not that they don't fail. It's just that the failure is not the end. It's
right.
not like, oh, I failed, the end. Let me go sit down somewhere. It's like, okay, I failed. What can I do better? There's a strategic approach there. Let's learn from this. And then how can I grow and move to the next thing? And you get up, dust yourself off and try again. And I find a lot of times with diet culture, there's this conversation of like the Monday start. So many times I've had this conversation with people about like, oh, I'll start on Monday. And I'm like, well, what about now? Like when
right.
you go to sit down to eat, every time you either walk in the kitchen or you sit down for a meal, it's your opportunity to make a better choice. It doesn't have to be perfect. It could be that breakfast, you were really good. Lunch, you were even better. You had a salad and an apple and maybe some nut butter. And then you had a snack and it was a little bad, but dinner, you went off the rails and you got a big bowl of pasta or McDonald's or whatever. So some might consider, oh, I guess it's a fail. My whole week is ruined. Let me start again Monday, instead of looking at, okay, let's see, did I drink enough water that day? Was breakfast actually fulfilling? Were my meals well-rounded, protein, carb, fat, fiber at every single meal? Like, was I eating for health? When I had that snack, that was my first downfall in quotes, in the middle of the day. Was it just because I was tired? Am I getting enough sleep? Was I just stressed? Like taking that failure that I'm going to start Monday and really reframing it and say, okay, nope, I've recognized that I didn't drink enough water earlier today. And I was really, really tired because I didn't get good sleep last night. So today I'm going to get better sleep and I'm going to make sure I'm more well hydrated. And I'm going to see how my energy does throughout the day. Even if you made the same exact mistake the next day, it's like, okay, same assessment. Nope, today it was just emotional. I had a really bad day at work and I was really stressed out. And I turned to that. And although it wasn't satisfying, I ate it all. And then I ate a bowl of ice cream. And then I felt really bad about myself. But now I know that that's also how I deal with my stress. So next day, wake up, make better choices, reframe those meals, reframe the mindset, take that 30-second break before you eat and say, okay, whoa, I almost wanted to go through the drive-through. I noticed it, but I don't even want to eat that. I'm just really sad today. So I'm going to go home. I'm going to make whatever I have at home so I can save money and I'm going to journal. Like just kind of.
I just released a YouTube video that was basically about the importance of the moment.
Yep.
Right. It's just a moment. So in any 12-step program, typically it's one day at a time. And I'm like, no, it's every moment. It's a moment at a time.
Yep.
Right. So when you, and if there's a few things that you mentioned there that are part of the program of, first of all, take out the words good and bad. Take them out. Because the moment you eat something that you consider bad, you feel guilt, and all of a sudden you give it power. It takes your self-worth. It takes your pride away. And all of a sudden you have the ability to feel like fall into shame, which is going to probably take you on a binge, right? I think one, learning from failure, but two, reframing it where it's a moment. If you would just let it go, it wouldn't control, like the rest of your day wouldn't be focused on, oh my God, I had a French fry.
Yeah.
If you could look at that and go, I enjoyed a small fry, and like, it's over. Like, it's done.
It's true. You can't go
I'm
back.
not triggering World War III. I didn't drop dead at that very minute. I didn't put my children at harm, right? Like if you put it in perspective, you had some French fries, let it go, relax. It's a moment in time. And I think that's what's really important and very difficult, because for those of us that struggle with emotional eating are perfectionists at heart. And so when being excellent is still failure because we're not perfect. And so that one French fry that we took off of our child's plate puts us into a complete tailspin spiral because we were excellent today, but we weren't perfect. And excellent just doesn't matter. And that's where the reframing to me is so important, right? Where, yeah, we do need to learn from failure, but the first thing we need to do is not let it define us. We not need to look at everything from a position of failure, but just a position of eating. And health is more than just your physical body, right? And so if you're in a social get together and you're like, man, everybody is partaking in this, and I really just want to be part of the crew and be a part of it, and I can do this without losing control. Enjoy the food.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't make it a big deal. When you make it a big deal, you're going to eat 52 chips with salsa or the entire plate of spinach dip. But when it's just like, hey, I want to enjoy this, and enjoy being the key word, getting joy.
Yeah.
Did you appreciate the salt on the chip? Did you like the crunch between your teeth? Did you really taste the certain herbs that were used in that? Like, did you truly appreciate and enjoy it? Then there's no room for guilt.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the joy from food, I find that food is either sustenance, and that's like the only way that certain people see it, or it's filling a void, right? And there's no like joy.
There's no joy in either one.
No. In other country in Europe, right? They put a lot of effort into the quality of their food, into what they're eating, into the fact that it's a social event, right?
It's an experience.
It's an experience. You take some bites, you have a conversation. It's all about getting together and discussing ideas. And it's more than just like, I'm going to sit down and scarf this burger.
Right. Like how Americans are like, how fast can we eat? Because it's a disruption in our day.
Correct. Whereas there, it's a pleasure to take a 2-hour lunch and like, let's live, let's have a glass of wine. Like, let's calm down and really taste the food. And I find that when you start to do that, when I started to do that, first bite, especially if I was thinking about it, right? First bite, awesome. Best thing I ever had. Second bite, still good. It's lost a little bit of its luster. Third bite, I'm not as hungry anymore. So like, it's all right. Fourth bite, I don't really want it, but I'm going to finish it. And then I end up eating it. I've learned to kind of try my hardest to stop at whatever bite is no longer giving me satisfaction.
Yeah.
No longer enjoying it. Because one, if you're looking at a caloric perspective, people would say it's like a waste of calories. Not so much that, but if I'm not getting anything out of it, maybe it's the quality. Maybe it's that I was PMSing. Maybe it's that I was emotionally eating. Like maybe there's a whole host of other reasons that I was actually eating it, and it wasn't because I thought it was going to be that good. And in that situation, there are times when it's like, oh, I really want pizza, I'm going to get a salad. And then you're like, this is the best dang salad. I'm so happy I made that choice. Not just because it's good, but because I feel good when I eat it. it fueled me. Now, sometimes I do just want to enjoy a slice of pizza,
And that's
I'll
okay.
do that until it doesn't serve me anymore. That's actually one of the reasons why I named the podcast the Pretty Healthy Podcast, and that there's a green juice and a pizza in the picture, because that was the thought, is that a lot of conversations these days are one or the other. It's all or nothing. It's veganism or it's mukbangs. And it's like, you can't have anything in between. And so people feel very torn when deciding about a lot of things related to health as to what is the right path, right? What's the right diet? What's the right exercise style? How much should I eat? Should I count macros? Should I count calories? Should I do both? Should it be paleo? Should it be keto? Because in every different direction, you can find evidence to support it all. But finding the balance that works for you, that allows you to live a healthy and sustainable life, is really the key.
Yeah. And the sustainability comes from the joy.
Yeah.
Right. So the healthiness comes from partially the food, but the sustainability is the joy. So there's 10 components of success in my book and my program. And we've talked about so many of them, not even knowing we have, but one of them is that you have to be able to enjoy your food. Because if you can't get joy out of your food, you're going to fail whatever eating regime you've decided, right? Like if you absolutely adore carbs and you decide to go keto, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to fail. You're going to be successful.
Absolutely.
I would lose weight for the finite moment you're on it. So people will ask me, like, what diet do you put people on? Because I do the nutrition side as well for people that want it. It's a smaller side of the business, but I have it. And a lot of times I'm like, well, it depends. So many people walk in already with this preconceived idea of what they want to do. And I'm not necessarily going to talk them out of that. And my thought is this: I don't, honest to God, care what you do, as long as you're going to be able to, one, enjoy the food, two, put the proper nutrition in your body to feel your best. And that is different for everybody. Somebody does feel better on a higher fat diet than me, right? I need carbohydrates, as in grain-based carbohydrates and potato-based carbohydrates, to feel my best. Now, not in the amounts I like to eat them, right? But I feel my best when I have grains. So, and that's through trial and error and being willing to listen to my own body and shut out the noise. Right? Your best friend has an opinion. Your mother has an opinion. Your cousin has an opinion. Instagram has an opinion. Everybody has a damn opinion. My opinion matters the most. Yeah. And I often can't hear. And that's what I try to tell my clients of, okay, so tell me what's worked for you. I had a client where she loved intermittent fasting, never lost a pound on it. She could not lose weight on it. And I said, well, great. So let's talk about what you most value and want. If you feel fantastic on it, how important to you then is the weight loss? Yeah. Well, pretty damn important. Okay. Then are you willing to try a different way, or adapting the intermittent fasting, or what are you willing to try to achieve the goal you want and still feel great? Because that's the end goal, to feel great.
Yeah, to feel great, to have great energy, to sleep well, to move well. It wasn't until I had kids that I started to really recognize that eating is beyond your aesthetic. And that sounds weird. I was in medical school. For other people, I get it. For me, I was always like, yes, most nutritious, but at the same time, I need to look a certain way. And it wasn't until I got pregnant and had kids that I started to have more grace for my body and physique and look at all of the other things it did for me beyond how it looked in a bikini. And then continue that on throughout how you choose to eat, how the lifestyle you choose to live is just like, are you able to do all the things you want to do in a day? While I'm doing intermittent fasting, I have been doing macro counting very loosely, and I like using tools like that for education. Let's see how you feel best. If I felt like garbage on intermittent fasting, I would stop. So far, I haven't. And my energy is good. I haven't been having an afternoon crash that I normally have, even with coffee. So I'm like, okay, I'm assessing, how is my energy? Am I able to go to the gym? Am I able to play with my kids? Do I find myself hungry at night? Am I finding myself starving during the day? If so, does that mean that I need more calories or more water? And kind of trying to assess that. You mentioned needing starchy carbs. I too need starchy carbs. I'm not trying to change my body chemistry over here. We love burning glucose and we're going to keep doing it. However, when you actually start to look at what a serving of rice is, it wants to bring a tear to my eye.
Like a half a cup. What the hell is a half a cup?
I could cry. Just thinking about the other day, I made some rice and I was like weighing mine out. I serve everyone else like whatever. And then I'm weighing mine out again, even doing it as an intermittent thing where you're like every few months, let me just check in and make sure that I still have portion control in mind and I'm still eating. One, because health. Two, because it allows you to know what makes you full. Like, am I full after a half a cup of rice?
What should make you full?
Correct. Which should make you full. Am I full after half a cup of rice? 4-ounce piece of protein, have a healthy fat and some vegetables and maybe like fruit or something. Like, does that not only satisfy me? Does it taste good? But am I full after that? Or do I find that no, I want to eat more rice, but not because I'm full, just because I like rice.
Right.
I put a half a cup on the plate and I was like, oh, like I was so sad. And then I got one of the prepared rice blends because I was in a hurry and I was like, I need easy tonight. And the serving for that is even more atrocious. And I was like, a fourth of a cup for like 260 calories. I wanted to die. I was like,
what's in it for 260 calories for a fourth?
I know there was like olive oil, some other stuff. I don't know. It might have been larger, but I remember putting like the fourth cup or half cup on the plate and being like, I am never making this again. Number one, it's not that satisfying. Number two, it's like not worth the trade-off and not like I'm going to go over exercise because of it or undereat because of it, but it doesn't satisfy me enough to warrant this. I would rather eat a brownie.
Right.
If I'm going to spend this caloric cash, I'm spending it somewhere else. I'm not spending it on this rice that I used for convenience that it's like me when it comes to taste and it's a little salty and like, why would I do that?
Right.
So speaking of that, part of the program, you have the nutrition coaching and you have the emotional eating. So do you find that people are more successful when they have not only the emotional eating component, right? When they resolve that, but if their goal is weight loss, to also have the component where they're learning more of how to eat?
So the answer is yes and no. And the reason why I say that is absolutely yes. If somebody is wanting to lose weight, having the emotional eating and the nutritional component at the same time, 100% is going to be the most successful. What that nutritional component is may be different though. Some people may actually need better understanding of how to eat. Mm-hmm. Most people that struggle with emotional eating probably could teach you and I about nutrition and fitness, right? Because they've studied everything, they've tried everything. They know how to eat. The problem is actually doing it. And so, although the nutrition component I offer is a teaching how to eat, but there's also an accountability program that I offer where if you already know how to eat, you're just struggling to do it, or you're pretty invested in your belief system of how to eat and you're not open to a different way of eating, then all we need to do is go more towards an accountability program where we're talking once a week as well about like, what did you food log? What's on it? How'd you do? What were your challenges? What were your successes? How prepared were you for the week? What have you done to prepare? Do you know you're traveling? What are you doing about that? Do you know you're going on a business trip, right? So in that regard, absolutely. If somebody has and usually with most service-based businesses, it's a budgetary constraint for people, at least in their own mind. I remember having a client that was like, I can't afford your services. But I look at my brand new Coach purse. And I was like, right. Everybody has the money. The amount of money people spend on Starbucks alone is enough to like feed an entire other country for a year. Yeah. And so people can afford anything they want to. The value's got to be there. So somebody were able to see the value and understand like, this isn't the next diet. This is an actual absolute changing in how I live my life, right? The program is teaching me self-forgiveness, not just with food, but overall. It's teaching me forgiveness for others as well, because most likely as an emotional eater and a perfectionist, other people drive you, I don't want to be inappropriate, insane.
Yeah.
For lack of my more creative words, drive you insane. And you end up being very judgy because you judge yourself, right? It's changing that. I can't tell you how many marriages have altered for the good as a result of my program. Because when you don't love yourself, you cannot feel love from the other. So no matter what love language you've got, you feel empty all the time. And that is not fun for your spouse, for your partner, right? Nor are you able to give love. You're in a state of resentment and lack of abundance. And so this program provides so much change that in my mind, is it worth it? Well, yeah, you get a whole new life out of it, right? New relationships, new experiences, everything. And along with that is if you add the nutrition or the accountability aspect in that, you also get that new body, right? That body that makes you feel proud of yourself, that body that makes you feel confident in clothing, the body that you are excited to shop for and dress versus the body that you're just hiding and covering up with really baggy clothing, right?
Yeah.
It's just so different. So the short answer is absolutely. The long answer is it all depends on what they need, but some level of either accountability or nutrition coaching alongside with it will get them the fastest results.
Okay. You were speaking on emotions and feeling love for yourself. And there's a quote from the book I'm going to read because I resonated so much with it. And I don't think people really recognize this. In the moment, I didn't recognize this. So you said in chapter 9, titled Feeling Emotions, if you get the workbook and you're reading it, you can't limit one emotion without limiting them all. So it is uncanny, again, the amount of people that don't recognize that when you are not feeling your feelings and instead you're eating your feelings or suppressing your feelings, that things that should be happiest in your life, you have like a monotone response. When I got married, the day of my wedding, something happened like the day before. And it was really disappointing, but like, what are you going to do? And I remember telling my husband, obviously fiance at the time, that like I was going to wait to write him this note. We said we were going to write each other notes and then read them on camera. And I was like, oh, I'm going to write you this note the day of our wedding so I'm really in the emotions. I'm really feeling all the feelings. Well, obviously I wasn't expecting something to happen the day before our wedding, where I literally like told myself, like, I don't have time to deal with this. Like you have people in town, you have a big event you have to put on, like you have to put on a happy face. It wasn't anything related to him. So it's not like we're canceling the wedding or anything. You just have to like shut up and get through it and do it with a smile on your face because you're gonna have these pictures for the rest of your life. Right. And it was sad. And I was like, if I cry, I don't know what's going to happen if I feel this right now. So I need to just like package this away and tuck it away. So the morning of the wedding, I'm sitting there and he knows the story obviously already. And I've had to pay a lot for this. So I'm sitting there getting my hair done. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I forgot to write the letter. I forgot all about the letter. We are very close. Like we're in hair and makeup. So the ball is rolling. I don't have time to tell the hairstylist, hey, I need to go sit by myself and like really try to tap into these emotions. So I'm like, can someone give me a pen and paper as I'm sitting here in a room full of other people with someone doing my hair and having a stressful event the night before the wedding, trying to write this letter. I swear I was like, I love you. You are awesome. Our life will be great. Who knew we would be here?
So heartfelt.
So heartfelt. It was on printer paper and it was literally like 4 or 5 lines. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong. Like, I know I love him, but I cannot find any words. Like I could not tap into anything. And so we exchanged letters and I told you we were having this recorded. So our wedding videographer is videoing me reading his note. And he like went out and bought special paper for it. He bought an envelope for it. It is pages long. And I'm reading it. I keep going, is this so much better than mine?
Right? Like you can't even immerse yourself in the moment and appreciate, right?
I was like flipping pages and I was like, oh, that's so good. Oh, mine's really bad. I know it's really bad. She's like videoing this. She did leave this part out of the actual video, but he said he got mine and he read it and he was like, 4 lines, very generic. Like I could have said it on the first date. It was bad. But what I realized, and I didn't realize it until we were on our honeymoon and we were like not getting along, but having a lot of little like tiffs on like small stuff. And I felt very blah when it should have been like the best day. And it was the most fun day ever. But what happened the day before, he's upset because he's like, you really stole that day from him because he got a muted version of me, and you stole it from me because I didn't feel everything that I should have felt that day because I couldn't.
Yeah. You're like under a veil.
Correct.
Everything's under a veil. Yeah. Right. And then you're looking through and it's kind of a little bit fuzzy and vague and unable to be fully experienced.
Yeah. So you're feeling it. I liken it to when I had my daughter. I had a C-section and I was under a lot of heavy anesthesia. It had been a really long few days to get to that point. So I was in a haze. I remember asking the nurses, like, am I supposed to feel this out of it? Like, I felt high as a kite. Like, I could barely, I was like, am I saying words or am I just thinking them? Like, that's how tired.
Wow.
It was like hard to speak. And I saw my daughter and I remember thinking, oh, this is her. I should probably kiss her forehead. I don't know. I feel like that's what they do. Like, this is the conversation happening in my head. And I was like, all right, hi there. All right, there we go. Like, see you when I see you. Like, that was it for something that should have been so full of emotion. And my wedding day was similar for a different reason. I just could not. And the week after, on our honeymoon, I was like, I was thinking about it. And I realized that when I shut off the sadness that I would have felt, I couldn't really feel super happy, because if I felt anything, it was going to be the sadness. It was like, if I opened that door, that was the emotion. It was like, ding dong, I've been waiting for you to let me in. So I'm first, then happy.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it. So it's really important addressing emotions as they come up and feeling things, right? Your title of your workbook is feel, not food. Like, choose the feeling, not the food, because it has other repercussions. Now imagine and I'm still working through all of that emotional stuff that happened on the wedding day, and it brought a rise to other stuff. But imagine feeling like that all the time and then not knowing that, wow, I'm living at like a 50%.
Sure. It's a veil, right? The veil's on all the time. Yeah. Because and really, I took that entire theory, that quote from Brene Brown, who, right, is that specialist on vulnerability, and emotions require vulnerability, whether they're happy or sad. So if you think of an emotion as a faucet of vulnerability, right? If you're going to you can't just shut it off a little bit without stuff still coming out. So if you want to feel no sadness, you have to just shut the faucet completely. Yep. And so vulnerability isn't allowed at that point. And you still require vulnerability to feel happy. Mm-hmm. Because when you allow yourself to feel the ultimate happiness, that's also when you could be your most hurt, right? Yeah. Because you're so high, you got nowhere else to go but down. Yeah. So happiness also requires a level of vulnerability, but we don't always see it that way. Sadness is what we want to avoid. That's vulnerable, right? Anger, based on how you look at it, is either empowering or vulnerable, but all of them require a vulnerability. So if you want to avoid one, all of them become muted, because you can't experience any of them without the vulnerability, and the faucet's been shut off. And so, you feel like you're in a fog, under this veil. And then you just start putting on a performance, right? Yes. And that's it. We become performers. It's about the external world and the judgment we'll receive, because we're kind of judging ourselves subconsciously. So we're putting on this performance for ourselves and for them, because we feel we need, like you said with your daughter. Yeah. I think this is what's expected. I think I'm supposed to kiss her and love her, right? Like, it's, I'm going to look bad. And I kind of feel bad right now because I don't know how to act. And honestly, you're probably just so overwhelmed. Yeah. Right. There were too many feelings. And so it was like, I'm overwhelmed. Let's just shut them all.
And the fatigue and the medication and everything in that moment, I was just like, even if I wanted to access, I had nothing to access. The wedding day, it was more of just like, I know what I would have to access, and I can't right now because I have a whole show of people coming and they don't want to see you being like sad, and you kind of just like, the show must go on.
Right. What we don't realize, though, honestly, if we would just allow the emotion to have its moment, it would go away. So, right, like if you had allowed yourself to experience either the sadness, the anger, the frustration, the unfairness, the injustice, whatever it was, whatever that emotion that needed to come out, if you had allowed yourself 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes, it would have, I describe it in the book as a wave, right? The wave is going to build and you have to let it crash. Once you let it crash, it immediately recedes because all it needed to do was get out that energy. Once it got to release the energy, it has the ability then to receive, but we make it so much bigger than it is because we fight it. And so then it lasts so much longer.
Well, and you have to do so much more work. Kids teach you a lot, and kids have such raw emotions. If you've got little kids around you and they're throwing a fit, I want you to step back for a second and not be irritated by the fit, but realize how deeply you are not feeling emotions. When I saw like how passionately angry my toddler gets, or how deeply sad and hurt she gets, or how happy and excited, like you watch them go through these things. And then you realize like, wow,
I don't experience any of that to that level, right?
So fast too. Now, obviously you become an adult and certain things are inappropriate in certain situations, right? You can't,
but that's just because we've said that. Like we're only
true, but if your boss is, if I was with a patient, I was like, you didn't listen to me. They might be like, wow, I'm out. So like, we could all agree that certain situations
for sure
warrant a muted response or a held back response, but to watch them experience stuff, I see it as so admirable, and I really want to harness that in them and encourage her. So we take an approach where it's more of like, okay, you want to talk or do you want to feel? Right? Like she's allowed to cry. We really try. There's not, when I was growing up, you know, obviously everything coming from a good place, it was shut up or I'm gonna give you something to cry about. Which
that was great. My mom loved that one.
I was like, you just gave me something to cry about, or else I wouldn't be crying. So shut up, or you're just gonna give me something else to cry about, and then we're gonna be in the same situation. Like,
right? We're in a cycle.
Who came up with that? But to see her crying, it's like, okay, you have a couple options. If you're in timeout and you're crying, you're in timeout. We'll talk when you're out of timeout. If it's that she's upset about something and it's more related to disappointment or sadness or anger in something, then she's allowed to go to her room and she can feel the feeling there. And I'll check on her. I know some people sit in the room, but she tends to kind of ramp it up with an audience. And this is more recent. She's about to be 3 and everyone talks about the 3-nager. She started to really ramp it up, like that, like blood curdling scream, like someone outside would think I'm murdering her. Like it's that level of a scream, where it's like, I need you to sit for a second. Just like you sit, I'll take a timeout, which there's nothing wrong with parenting. I'm like, let me take a timeout from the situation, really assess it and see if there's anything I could have done differently or change. And then you also take a second and have your feelings. So I'll pop it in a little bit and be like, hey, do you want to talk or do you still want to cry? Or are you still like working through it? She's like, I don't want to talk. I'm like, okay. So like, let's take a deep breath, and then we kind of go through the breathing and I'm like, okay, so tell me what was wrong. And most of the time through that, she's made the decision to talk. She's realized she can be as upset as she wants to be and she's not getting punished for it. And there's no, I'm not muting her or punishing her for being sad or angry. And then she'll say, I really wanted to X and you said no. Okay, well, here's why I said no. And sometimes she gets it. She's 3. Sometimes she doesn't. Right. So she's not always going to understand, but I do want her to know that she can feel
safe.
Yes.
Right. Be safe. And like, there are some parenting techniques in the book as well. And then the program, in the fact that part of our emotional eating is learned. And so right, like if you're upset here, don't cry, right? That's like the number one thing parents love to say is, hey, don't cry. And I'm like, that is the number one thing not to say. Yeah. Because what happens is we start teaching our children there's something wrong with sadness. Yeah. And so there's something wrong with unhappiness. And we need to get ourselves back to happiness as fast as possible because it's the only acceptable emotion, and do whatever is necessary to do that. And that is not what we want to teach our children, because then they aren't multidimensional. They aren't truly able to feel all emotions appropriately. Yeah. When children are crying, let them cry and don't say anything. Hold them. Yeah. Give them comfort, right? There's no need to resolve anything. There's no need to talk them through it. Yes. But in the crux of it.
Yes. Well, there's no talking to a blood screaming
right?
3-year-old.
That's it. And whether they're 3, 13, whatever, right? Anger, and let it out.
Yeah.
Right? Frustration, let it out. And yeah, maybe in the beginning it's blood curdling screams because that's what they feel. And maybe we feel as a parent, our job is to teach them better ways to release it. But that still is teaching them to release it and not hide it, skim over it, suppress it, push it under, because happiness is the only thing we're okay with.
Yeah. Well, then the other thing is you have to unlearn that.
Right.
The most profound thing I got out of therapy was when my therapist said, you're an adult now. You can give yourself what you needed. You can reparent yourself. And I was like, what? Like, it never dawned on me. They were like, you don't need your parent to give you permission for X, Y, and Z. You can do it yourself, but you do have to unlearn the behaviors. And a lot of emotional eating comes from the suppression of emotions often that you learn in early childhood, just that it's not okay. I used to hate crying. I still highly dislike crying in front of people. But when I was a kid, it was very much unacceptable because anytime I did cry, it was, shut up, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Get out of here. Why are you so emotional? It was always talked down upon and seen as something shameful, seen as a weakness. And so I remember being like, well, I don't want to be weak, therefore I won't cry. At the same time, happiness too is celebrated and is good. Anger was exampled. And so a lot of my reaction, even when I started dating my husband, was like anger. And I'm already a loud talker. So it's a step from here. It's barely a step from here to a yell. And having to relearn that. Like, why is your reaction always to yell at someone? Why is your reaction to say this or that? And I was like, wait a second. That's because that's what I saw.
That's what you saw.
I saw that was the appropriate reaction. I saw that crying wasn't okay. Anger is just fine. And happiness is good too. Every other thing is kind of like, well, if it's inconvenient, I don't want to see it or hear it. And so if we do that to children, whether or not we mean to or not, they then have to become older, recognize that that's what's wrong and undo that work, which can be really hard to break up, like you said, all of those years of experience.
And it can be very scary, right? So like I had a client where they had some really deep-seated learnings from their childhood that were very negative. And as an emotional eater, struggled with her weight her entire life and was desperate to focus just on the food because focusing on anything else was just way too scary.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, she chose me as her professional. And I'm like, we're not going to focus on the food at all, actually.
Can you read my website?
Right? Like, we're not going to focus on the food at all because it's not your problem. You're your problem. And the food's just your weapon, right? Like your food is what you're using. But once you're healed, the food is unnecessary. So like the food really, honest to God, doesn't matter. And it was so hard for her. But, we would get to this point where, trying to talk about like the emotion and what's okay and what's not okay. And it was just so deep seated. In the end, she had an unwillingness to feel.
Yeah.
Right. We had to make the decision to part ways because I couldn't help her at that point. You have to feel if you no longer want food to control you.
Yeah.
And to constantly battle your weight and you're not ready. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the problem of having a lesson that is taught. And then once you get to adulthood, it's not just that you're capable now of being your own parent. There's got to be a willingness.
Yeah.
Right. To change. My oldest brother grew up in a very different parenting environment than I did. And so the only emotion he's truly, really comfortable with is anger. And has no desire to get past that because for us, anger is empowering. It's a very powerful emotion. And it's almost like, might equals right. Well, anger is your might.
Yeah.
And so I shall prevail and nobody's going to, right? Because it's
the biggest, loudest, baddest in the room.
Yeah.
It's often the most insecure and hurt is the person who's going to push you away the most.
Absolutely. And unfortunately in our society, because everybody's so afraid of conflict, it's also the one that gets the most given to them and done. Right?
Because
like
you're just
nobody
like,
wants
all
the
right,
angry,
man.
right? Nobody wants the angry. So they're like, oh my God, whatever you want here, you can have it. So it just validates the power of anger. And so very one-dimensional.
Yes.
Right. So that's what we fall into. And then, so we do it. Like the people that do the best in my program are those that are sick of only experiencing life through the veil.
Yeah.
Are sick of always defaulting to the same and usually extreme emotions.
Yeah.
Right. Severe, like almost manic happiness to severe manic upset, and would rather find a greater level of stability and are willing to look at things differently, see things differently, think things differently, speak things differently to do that. Understanding.
Yeah.
It's a process. And when the program, the 4 to 6 month program is done, they're not done.
Yeah.
Right. They've simply now got the toolbox. They still got to open it and use the tools.
Yes. Which is the hardest part. Food is a lot easier to focus on.
Yes. 100%.
It's way easier.
Pleasurable.
On a diet.
Yes.
Way easier. It's a lot harder to have to look in the mirror, to have to look on your actions. And then the cognitive dissonance part of that, even look at your parents' actions and assess them. Because again, if they're wrong about this, then what else were they wrong about? And the whole construct of your life can come crashing down. Now you can choose to say it's coming crashing down and I'm going to rebuild it with things that mean something to me and with habits that are going to keep me healthy and keep me sane and keep me emotionally well. But at the same time, someone who is super controlling with food and finds that the easier route, that will be 10 times harder because, well, I had this structure. I knew exactly what to expect. And now you've taken that away. And now I'm just like flopping in the wind. And I don't have anything to give me yes or no or right or wrong, because now I'm that person who tells me yes and no and right and wrong. And that is scary to me because maybe I was told I was incapable of being the person who made that decision so long ago.
And that's why the self-worth is the starting point, right? Because to your point, you're now the creator of your own truth. Mm-hmm. You are now the decision maker. And how can you possibly come at that from a place of trust when you've been trained all your life you're not worthy or able or capable? And so the program really starts and focuses on the fact of how do we prove to ourselves we are trustworthy, we are capable, and taking these little baby steps of proof.
Yeah.
Right. And changing mindset through baby steps, changing dialogue through baby steps, changing behavior through baby steps, because humans need proof. The doubting Thomases of the world, we're all of them. And we love to doubt ourselves the most. And so when we can prove through baby steps, I can experience success. And this is huge. I can only appreciate the success if I'm willing to acknowledge it, right? Self-confidence comes from acknowledging success, not necessarily having success.
Yeah.
I've had a client where we had to have this conversation of, will you ever be able to recognize you've gotten to your goal?
Yeah.
Will it ever be enough?
That's so hard.
It's so hard because she's like, I don't think so. So then why keep trying, right? Because a lot of the times the reason why we continually fail is because we never truly believe we're going to get there anyway.
Yeah.
And we're not willing to appreciate and love where we get. It's never enough. And so it's easy to give up. It's easy to have continuous moments of these fails because we don't truly believe we're going to get there anyway.
Yeah. Or that you deserve it. Even if you get it.
That's the self-worth.
Even if you get it, it's that, well, why me? It's that imposter syndrome, right? Like, why me? Wow, I can't believe I pulled that one off.
Right. And my whole thing is, why not you? Right?
Which is a great counter.
Not you.
Yeah.
Because really, what makes somebody else worthy and you not?
Well, also, if you start to unpack that question, then you really start to get to the reason, to the core, right? Why not you? Well, I'm not smart enough. Well, clearly you are, or else you wouldn't have gotten the job. So what else? Well, I'm not qualified. Well, again, you are, and you can kind of go through the line until you get to like, I'm not worthy enough, right?
Right.
And then why do I think that? And a lot
Yeah.
of that does come from those past conversations and past things that you've been told, even in passing. I had one patient and we were having a lot of issues losing weight. And it was yo-yo dieting, right? On and off and on and off. And one day we were having a conversation and I was like, why do you think it's so hard? Right. And it's like, oh, I don't know. Like, I just, have that start on Monday mentality that I need a plan. Well, okay. Well, when you don't have someone to tell you how to eat, then you go off the rails. So maybe we need to explore how to teach you how to eat, because yes, the control feels good, but when it's gone, then you also are off the deep end, and then you gain all the weight back and plus some. After talking though, we realized that one of her parents had told her that weight would be the death of her. And I was like, that's it. That's the moment that it's the cognitive dissonance. They spoke that on your life. And you as a child said, well, if my mom is right about the fact that I can't eat too much sugar, or right about the fact that I should brush my teeth, then she has to be right about that.
Right.
And subconsciously you're letting that hold you back because she prophesied that almost, right? She spoke it and you believed it. And so you're dealing with that. And their response was like, no, I don't worry about things like that. I don't dwell on them. And I was like, oh no, like we were so.
Well, that's right. And that's the question side where I come in to be able to say consciously, no.
Correct.
Which is why, how old are you? The struggle continues.
Yeah.
Right. So now that we know this, you brought it up. I'm only aware of it because you spoke it aloud.
Yeah.
It was in there. And now,
so obviously you're thinking about it on some level.
On some level. So now that it is out, there's a choice to be had. Are you going to face it?
Yeah.
Or are you going to shove it back in the subconscious? Right.
Yeah.
And shoving it back in the subconscious keeps you in the same loop. And that's a choice. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's your life. It's your choice. But then you and I need to come up with a new path to work together, right? Because like the weight loss path is going to be continuously wrought with failure.
Yep.
Or we pull it out and we safely face it.
Yep.
And we talk about it and we figure out, why were we so willing to embrace it? How has it served us?
Yeah.
If it has served us well, it makes sense to keep it in some way, right? Like for some people, being overweight serves them. It's a protection. It's a shield. It keeps from getting attention. Like it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
We may not like the weight, but it has a purpose, right? Like I talk in my book how I will often verbally self-abuse. It has a purpose. I didn't know what, and I figured it out, right? But it served a purpose. Well, now that I understand what it was doing, did it really do its job? So am I willing to let it go?
Yep.
Right? And that's when all of a sudden true change happens and food starts losing its power.
Yeah. Wow. This has been such a good I feel like we could go on
forever, right?
It's so true, but it's been so good to hear about your perspective and your program and your process. And it's definitely something that I believe more people need to know, because everyone, with food being what it is, right? Food is a part of your everyday life. Think about every other addiction. You don't have to drink alcohol. You don't have to do drugs. You don't have to smoke cigarettes. You have to eat food. Yep. And so if you don't get to the root cause of why the food is playing that role in your life, then it really makes it hard to overcome it. And you really never will. So emotional eating really is an amazing place to start, even if you're pairing it with something like a nutrition coaching or counseling. That way they can help you kind of relearn the structure that should have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. How can people find you?
Oh, Dr. Brandi, thank you for asking. So themonarcheffect.com is where you can really learn about all of my services. You can kind of purchase the book, the program, find me. I have a blog. Everything is on themonarcheffect.com. I also have a pretty big presence on Facebook. There's a YouTube channel, all of it under The Monarch Effect. And then the book itself, if you don't want to go for the website, you can just go straight to Amazon and you can find that there.
Awesome. I will post the Amazon link as well as all of your contact details in the show notes. So you guys definitely check it out and check Theresa out. So thank you so much for joining us today, guys. Please, again, check out all of Theresa's info down below. I will see you guys next week with a new episode, and have a great week. Bye.